time on this certain day, and everybody who kills them gets to take all of their stuff. That seems extreme, right? That's an extreme mindset. This is the highest form of nobody wants to play by my rules, so I'm going to take my ball and go home. This is way beyond what the normal scope would be. This goes, the anger of Haman goes beyond just hurting Mordecai. It is to hurt everybody that he is in community with, everybody that he is connected with. And whether you know it or not, we have an enemy today who is out after us. Jesus said it in John 10:10 that there is an enemy and his sole purpose is to steal from us, to kill us, to destroy the people of God. That is his purpose. If you did not know that this morning, I am your wake-up call. You are not just living normal life. You are not just going about your day and the only thing that's coming after you is your Ameren bill. That is not it. There is an enemy. I'm not saying Ameren's not coming after you. They're coming after all of us. But there is an enemy who wants more than just your payment for your electric bill. There is an enemy who wants to steal things from you, who wants to kill you spiritually, physically, emotionally, and who wants to destroy every good thing that God has placed in your life. That is the purpose of this enemy. We need to be aware of this. And so when Mordecai becomes aware of Haman's plans, he gets into a posture of mourning. He strips off his governmental robes. He puts on sackcloth and ashes. In other words, imagine like you take off your nice suit, you go and put on your mowing clothes, and you get ashes out of your fireplace and just sprinkle them all over yourself, and you just sit in a corner and are crying. This is essentially what he's done. And Esther's like, what in the world's going on? And in this process, he reaches out to her for help. He wants her to go before the king to receive mercy for the people and help for the people, because she has an opportunity being queen. She is able to do what no one else in the kingdom can do to get his attention. If we look at Esther chapter 4, verses 10 through 14. Then Esther spoke to Hathach and commanded him to go to Mordecai and say, all the king's servants and all the people of the king's provinces know that if any man or woman goes to the king inside the inner court without being called, there is but one law to be put to death, except the one to whom the king holds out the golden scepter so that he may live. But as for me, I have not been called to come in to the king these 30 days. So Esther goes, hang on, time out. Whew. There's a law that says if I go to the king without him calling for me, and he doesn't accept that I'm just coming in and making myself known in front of him, that I'm just coming in and interrupting his day, he can kill me. I think sometimes in our minds, we think, oh, I don't think that praying will help this. I don't think that, can we just be real this morning? Our Christian mind goes, we know that God wants to do everything for us, and we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. But then stuff happens, and our minds go, oh, God's not going to be able to help me with this. Can we just be real? Our minds do that. And I love what Mordecai says to her. They told Mordecai what Esther said. Then Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, do not think to yourself that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. In other words, Mordecai says, listen, you're going to die one way or the other. If you go in and make yourself known to the king, you might die. If you don't, you're going to die with all the rest of us. And I think we need to be reminded sometimes that we have things and situations in our lives that the enemy is using to attack us, that he's coming against us, and our first response isn't to go to God in prayer, and we think we'll figure it out ourselves. We'll make do. We'll make it work. And I think somebody needs a Mordecai in their life to say, listen, if you don't go to God with this, one way or the other, it's going to take you out. It's either going to destroy you physically, it's going to wreck you emotionally, or from a spiritual standpoint, you're going to drift so far from God that you won't know which way to turn to go find him again. You have to make a move, because sitting still will not benefit you at all. It won't do it. Verse 14, he says, if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Mordecai, he reminds her that you might be in the position that you're in for this specific purpose and time. And I don't know what you're facing today. You don't know what I'm facing in my life. We don't live all together. We come together on Sundays. We come together on Wednesdays. But we all have things we're dealing with in life. If you have figured out how to live life without having to deal with things, please come up and take the microphone. We would love to hear from you. Please. But for the rest of us who live in the real world, we all deal with stuff. There is constantly things that are coming against us. There are constantly things that are trying to steal from us, to kill us in some form or fashion, to destroy the things that God has put into our life. Here's the good news. Whatever the enemy is using to try to steal from you, whatever he's using to try to kill something inside of you, whatever he's using to try to destroy what God has given you, it has not caught God off guard. It did not catch him by surprise. He knew it was coming. And maybe he puts you in the place you are in, knowing what was going to come against you for such a time as this, for this purpose, for this time, because he knew that what he had put inside of you was able to overcome what was coming, what he foresaw coming against you. Right? He has ordered and ordained you for a time as this to be able to stand against what the enemy's bringing to you and to show that your situation, your problem, your trouble, how great and how powerful and how awesome your God is. Think about the 3 Hebrew children. It didn't catch God off guard that they were going to be thrown into a furnace. It did not catch God off guard. It didn't catch God off guard when Daniel was thrown into a den of lions. That didn't catch him off guard. He put those people that he trusted into that time and into that place for that moment, because he knew that when they would stand up for what was right in the face of what was coming against them, that it would be the greatest opportunity for their world and those around them and those who were watching what was happening to them to not see how great they were, but to see how great their God was. And that's what we have to get in our mind, that Mordecai is saying, Esther, this is an opportunity that you have been put in this place and this time, not just to save your own skin, but to show the power of your God and the way that he's going to take care of everybody else around you, everybody else connected to you, everything else that everybody else is looking at and saying there's no hope. Verse 15, then Esther told him to reply to Mordecai, go gather all the Jews to be found in Susa and hold a fast on my behalf, and do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my young women will also fast as you do. Then I will go to the king, though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. Esther doesn't say, I'm going to the king right now to go try to find an answer. Esther doesn't say, I'm going to go out and do my checkbook and make sure I've got enough funds to cover this. She doesn't say, I'm going to go make sure that all of my ducks are in a row and I've got everything figured out in my house. She didn't say, I'm going to go and make sure that I've got everything that I need physically, that I can do physically. The first thing she says is, gather everybody you can. We're going to pray. Our first response a lot of times when trouble comes is, I'm going to fix it. Guys, ladies, I don't know how your mind thinks. I've been trying to figure it out for 10 years of marriage. I'm still at square one. But guys, we're fixers, right? That moment when your wife comes and she's complaining about stuff and you start in your mind and then it comes out your mouth real quick, well, we'll just do this and that. And she's like, I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm just trying to tell you, why are you talking to me about it? Because I'm going to fix it. You can't fix it. Watch me. Right? And that's the way our minds work, is I'm going to fix it. Okay, I'm going to get over here and do what I can here. And then if I do that, I know I can do this over here. And I'm pretty sure I can get this person to do that. And I'm going to get it. And if everything goes just right, I'm going to fix it. And by the time that we get that all worked out in our minds, we're already behind the 8 ball and we're losing. Right? If our first response would be, okay, God, what do you have to say about this? God, I'm going to spend some time just talking to you. If that would be our first response, I don't know why we get to the point where we think that we're smarter than God and we can figure it out better than He can. You remember being a kid? I've got 2 boys that if they do something they're not supposed to, or they break something or whatever, man, so easily their mind is, okay, how can we fix this ourselves without talking to Dad about it? How quickly can we make this look right? How quickly can we make this look like nothing happened? I just punched my brother and put a bruise on him. How can I cover this up? You parents, you know this does not work, because we tried it as kids and it didn't work for us either. Because mom and dad always found out. Things usually ended up worse than if we would have just went and told them what was going on. Right? Why is it that we are grown people who don't understand that our Father in heaven just wants us to bring it to Him? Why is that not our first response? Esther responds correctly. She says, get everybody together, we're going to pray. She could have said, get everybody together, gather all the weapons you have, we're going to go fight Haman and all the people. She could have said, get everybody together, grab all your things, tonight at midnight, when it's darkest, we're going to make a run for it. She said, no, let's pray. Let's fast. If this isn't our first response, we're already behind. If this isn't our first response, we're already hurting. We have to begin to make prayer our first response. I want you to go with me to Isaiah chapter 58. Verse 6. It says, is this not the fast that I chose? Talking about prayer and fasting to loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the straps of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke. So that's what God says. This is what prayer and fasting does. This is what it does when we choose that first. That it looses the bonds of wickedness. It undoes the straps of the yokes that the world and the enemy tries to put on us, and it breaks those yokes and lets those people go free. Verse 8 says, then shall your light break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up speedily, and your righteous shall go before you. The glory of God shall be your rear guard. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry, and He will say, here I am. if we would make the prayer our first response, things would go so much better. I don't think the story of Esther would have ended correctly. It would not have ended the way that we wanted it to, had she not said, get everybody together before I go and just go make my plea for what's going on. Before I go and try to fix this myself, I'm going to pray. We're going to pray. Prayer, fasting does what we can't do. And it allows God to do what only He can do. It brings freedom. It brings restoration. It brings the hand of God into the situations and fixes things that we can't. Do you believe that? Esther chapter 5. On the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace in front of the king's quarters, while the king was sitting on his royal throne inside the throne room opposite the entrance to the palace. And when the king saw the queen Esther standing in the court, she won favor in his sight. She won favor in his sight. And he held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. Then Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter, and the king said to her, "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given you even to the half of my kingdom." And Esther said, "If it please the king, let the king and Haman," notice that, "let the king and Haman come today to a feast that I have prepared for the king." Then the king said, "Bring Haman quickly, so that we may do as Esther has asked." So the king and Haman came to the feast that Esther had prepared. Here's Esther. She comes before the king who loved her above all else, the king who chose her out of everyone else that he could have chose, and she was accepted into his throne room. I want you to look at James chapter 4, verse 8 with me. "Draw near to God, and He will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, you double-minded." We're told to draw near to God, and that He will draw near to us. Look at Hebrews chapter 4. "Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in times of need." I want you to know this morning, Jesus loves you. Jesus chose you. He wants you to draw near to Him. He's waiting for you. "I've got all these problems, Pastor Nick. I've got all these things." Jesus is waiting for you to come to Him. He's just waiting for you to come to Him. Don't let the enemy lie to you and tell you you have to wait for God to come to you. Don't let the enemy tell you you have to go to that special service and wait for that special person to lay their special hand on your special head to get something to happen. You can go to God and get the same thing. You don't have to wait for His servant. You can go straight to Him. You can go straight to Him. The Bible tells us to boldly come before the throne of grace. That's what Esther did. She boldly went into the throne room and was accepted. You and I can do the exact same thing when we have things that are coming against us, when we have things that are trying to destroy us. We have access to the throne room of God. And we can go. And here's the great part. He's waiting for you to come. He's just sitting there waiting for you to come. We read that in James, that if we'll draw near to God, He'll draw near to us. He's just sitting there waiting. You and I have the right to come to Him boldly, and we should have the expectation to receive what we need from Him. He's waiting for us to come to Him. If you're sitting there, well, I'm waiting for the right time and the right moment and the right person, don't. You need to go now. You need to go this morning. You need to go before this service is over. Don't wait any longer. And here's what's interesting. Esther right then and there could have said, "Hey, king, you know Haman. Yeah, we got a problem." She could have went in there, just, "Bless God, I got a problem and you need to fix it." Right? This is the flip side. In Christianity, it seems like you got the two extremes. You got the extreme that says, "I can't go into the throne room of God. Oh, he might strike me dead. That the people, the building might catch on fire if I walk in. Oh, God. You got that extreme. Then you got the other extreme. God owes me everything and anything that I want. And when I come, I'm bringing my Christmas list, and he better have his red suit and big belly. Because guess what? I got some things that he has to fix. That don't work either. Jesus is not Santa Claus. And he wants to hold you, but he doesn't want you to sit on his lap and tell him what he's supposed to do. He's sovereign. He's God. And when we come before him boldly, we also come before him reverently. He's our friend, but he's our Father. He's our Savior, but he's our Master. And we come before him boldly, but with reverence. And so she doesn't request or demand that Haman be hanged right now. She looks at the king and says, I'd like to invite you to a banquet that I want to hold in your honor. And I want you to, and I also want Haman to come. Esther's request wasn't to destroy Haman. Her request was, let me honor and worship my king. And I think sometimes if we would spend a little less time trying to just get our king to destroy all our problems, and we would spend a little more time just giving him a little bit of praise and worship, not because of what he can do, but because of who he is, I think we'd have more answered prayers, and I think we'd have less problems. If we would stop trying to seek him for what his hands can do and start seeking his face because of who he is. Let me tell you something. Relationship will go a whole lot further than rules will. The king told her, I'll give you up to half of my kingdom. She could have easily demanded for Haman to be killed, but she had an understanding that although there's a rule that he's just put in place that I can have what I want, I'm going to get a lot further with him if I come at him from a relationship than from a rule. If I come at him not for what he can do for me, but who he is to me. And when we come into worship and praise, how many knows there's a lot of times we come into worship and praise, we come into church, is anybody else like me, you get in your car and you start worshiping and praising, and either the people at the light next to you either think you're like possessed because you're just, or they think you're depressed because you're just, and like you need windshield wipers for your glasses and all that. But so many times we do that in our lives, or we come into church and we feel like we have to leave our situation at the door when we come in, right? All right, problem. I'm going to park my car right here. You wait for me right here. I'm going to go inside. I'm going to worship. I'm going to praise. I'll be back. I'll deal with you after lunch, right? That's not what Esther does. She says, invite Haman to the party. Why in the world would you want to invite your enemy to the party? I've had parties. I didn't invite people I didn't like. Right? Maybe all you are better people than I am. But when I have parties, I don't invite people I don't like. I don't. You know? There are times that you have Thanksgiving and Christmas with people you don't like because you have to. But when it's my party, there are people who aren't going to get invited because I don't want to see them. But Esther invites her enemy to her party. She doesn't just invite the king, she invites her enemy. Why? Because her enemy, she's looking at him and going, You just sit right there, watch me lavish on the king. What would it do to our enemy, to our situation, to what it is that we're fighting with if we said, no, you're not staying out there and waiting for me. You come right over here. You come right up next to me. Oh, you want to make me sick? Watch me get my praise on. You want to keep me messed up and thinking that I don't have enough to make it through? Watch this. Because my praise and my worship is not dictated by my problem. My praise and my worship is dictated by my king. Oh, come on, that's better than what you're... My worship and my praise is not dictated by my problem. It's dictated by my king. I'm not there to worship and praise my problem. My problem's been following me around all week. My problem's been fighting with me for a month. I'm not there to worship it. I'm there to let it see that no matter what you've done to me all week, no matter what you've tried to do to me this month, I still got to praise. I still going to worship. I'm not going to let you keep me tied down and defeated. Why? Because my worship isn't for you. My praise isn't for you. It's not dictated by what you did to me this week. It's not dictated by how I felt this week. It's dictated by who I'm worshiping and who I'm praising. What if we would take our situations and bring them to the party and say, you get a front row seat. You just sit right there. You think you've had me messed up. You think you've had me bound up. You think you've had me in knots where I just want to sit in a fetal position and just moan and groan about how sick I've been or about how much money I don't have or about the problems I'm dealing with in my relationships. You think you got me? Watch this. Watch me bust out a move here. You think you got my feet all bound up? Watch this. I'll just give you a little kick while you're watching. What if we did that? What if that's the attitude we came into in praise and worship? You look at Esther 5, I'm not going to read them verses 6 through 8, but essentially they have a party and the king says, okay, what is it you want? And she says, if this has pleased you, come to another party. And Haman, you come too. Sometimes you have to bring your problem to the party more than once. Well, bless God, Pastor Nick, I did what you said, and I brought my problem to the party, and then it left and went to lunch with me, and it's still there. Bring it again. Bring it again. Well, what happens if it doesn't leave that time? Bring it again. Because eventually, there's going to come a point where our king's going to go, okay, we've had enough parties. What's the problem? And the problem's going to get taken care of. Problem's going to get taken care of. It's going to happen. That story of Naaman who had leprosy, and he goes, and the prophet Elisha says, go dip in the Jordan 7 times, and he dips once and comes back up and still got leprosy. Dips a second time, dips third, all the way up to 6 times. It's been preached so many times, but it's still true. What if he had stopped at 6 times? What is it going to hurt to bring your problem with you into the church one more time and say, watch me. Watch me praise and watch me worship. The world brings all of its problems wherever it goes with no hope of an answer. Some of you will get this reference, some of you might not, but I've been to dances and weddings and parties, and people are out there and they're whipping and they're nay-naying and all that kind of stuff. What if we brought our problem and say, hey, problem, watch me praise and watch me worship. Watch me, what? Watch me? Yeah. Because I'm not going to stop. My praise and my worship isn't dictated, and if you have to come with me 15,000 times, you're going to come 15,000 times, and you might trouble me, but you're going to watch me worship through it. You're going to watch me praise through it. Chapter 7, On the second day, as they were drinking wine after the feast, the king again said to Esther, "What is your wish, Queen Esther? It shall be granted to you. And what is your request? Even to the half of my kingdom it shall be fulfilled." Then Queen Esther answered, "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be granted me for my wish, and my people for my request. For we have been sold, and I and my people to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. If we had been sold merely as slaves, men and women, I would have been silent, for our affliction is not to be compared with the loss to the king." Then the king said to Queen Esther, "Who is he and where is he who has dared to do this?" And Esther said, "A foe and an enemy, this wicked Haman." Then Haman was terrified before the king and queen. Let me tell you something. When you get to that place where you bring your problem and you say, "Watch me worship. Watch me praise. Doesn't matter what you've done. Check this out." When the king takes notice, your problem gets scared. When you take notice of your problem, you get scared. When your focus is on your king and the king's focus turns to your problem gets scared. That's what worship and praise does. That's what worship and praise does. You think we come in here on Sunday mornings and just sing 3 songs just to fill time. That's not what it is. It is our chance that we are going to give God the best worship and the best praise that we have because he's worthy. And I know that when I draw near to him, he draws near to me. And when I worship him, he fights on my behalf. He comes and takes care of it for me. I don't have to defeat my problem. He defeats my problem. I don't have to defeat my situation. He's going to come and take care of it. Why? Because my focus isn't on it anymore. My focus is on him. Long story short, the very things that Haman wanted to kill the Jews on, the king turns around and hangs Haman on. The gallows that Haman had specialty built to kill the Jews, Haman himself goes and gets hung on. When we decide to praise and worship in spite and in front of our situations and in front of our circumstances, all we're doing is we're exposing our enemy to the king. I don't want my problem sitting outside waiting for me. I want it someplace where the king can see it. I want it someplace where he can take notice of it. And our king who loves us and who will stand up for us, I believe that he raises a standard against us. That scripture that we use all the time, when the enemy comes in, and then we put a comma there, or we put a comma, when the enemy comes in like a flood, comma, the Spirit of the Lord will raise up a standard against it. Did you know in the Hebrew language there are no commas? So if King James got to put a comma where he wanted to, I'm going to put a comma where I want to. I change it. When the enemy comes in, comma, like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will raise up a standard against it. I believe that when I come before him with my problem in praise and in worship, he comes in like a flood. The enemy's not got the flood, our king's got the flood. And he brings a flood and a standard against my problem and against my situation. If you will stand with me this morning. Today's altar call is going to be a little different because I'm not going to ask you to come to the front and pray if you've got a trouble or situation. I'm not going to tell you you can't pray, but I'm not going to ask everybody to come up and just begin to pray and us have that moment where it's just kind of more quiet, more reserved. We're going to play a song. And it's one of worship and praise. It's a song of victory. And I'm going to invite you, if you are fighting a battle, if you've brought a situation in with you today that you're like, I just can't seem to get past it. It just keeps wanting to tear me down. I'm struggling with it, and nobody knows I'm struggling with it, but this thing is tearing at me, and it's tearing at my marriage, and it's tearing at my home, and it's tearing at my work, and it's tearing at my health, and mentally it is just draining me. I'm not going to invite you to come this morning and beg God to come and take notice. He's already taken notice. I'm going to invite you to come to this front and give him the best praise and the best worship that you have inside your body. And I'm going to invite you to tell your situation before you get here, come with me. You got to watch something. You've been fighting me. You've been beating me up. You've been trying to tear me down and break me down. And it was a struggle for me just to get here this morning. But watch me praise. Watch me worship. Why don't you just get the attitude? You all seen that dance, that watch me whip, watch me nay, that attitude that he's got. Why don't you get that attitude in your spirit this morning? Watch me praise. Watch me worship. Come on. Why don't you get that attitude in you this morning? Problem, you just come watch. Watch me praise. Watch me worship. Because my king is getting ready to mess you up. I ain't going to have to touch you. My king's going to do it for me. When I praise and I worship him. I'm inviting you, if that's you, come to this altar. Let's worship.